Hello, and welcome to this edition of People in Transition. I'm your host, Bob Gerst. I've been hiring and mentoring executives, frontline employees, and job seekers for nearly 40 years through a host of transitions, some difficult, but most very good. This experience has given me a bird's eye view on a variety of trends, economies, industry disruptors, and transitions, big and small. It also brought me into contact with the thought leaders and decision makers you need to meet. Imagine knowing exactly what to do next and how to know it's time to make your big job change. We all know transitions can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. And it's even fun when you have actionable strategies and proven tactics to achieve the future you want. We'll share with you the tools and skills that can take your dreams to your next great job. So if change is on your horizon, you won't want to miss this discussion. Also, please subscribe to this podcast so you won't miss any future episodes. Chad Bean, thank you so much for being on this episode of People in Transition. Ever since we started chatting on LinkedIn, I've really been looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you as well. I'm excited to be on.
Chad, one of the starting questions I always ask my guests is, if you think back when you were a child, what is it that you wanted to be when you grew up?
I was probably most told that I would be an attorney or in sales, but I always saw excitement in entrepreneurship. And I think I always knew I would be a business owner and just wasn't sure of the industry.
And what did you experience as transition moments for yourself as you viewed yourself as that either an attorney or in sales or entrepreneur to where you're at today?
I would say primarily my family and friends were in traditional employment for long-term companies. I didn't know a lot of entrepreneurs. My dad made the change later in life, and I saw that change. He was successful in small business, and I saw that as an exciting opportunity, something that I could do, and I wanted to do it at a really large scale. But I knew you had to have career expertise, or at least that would give you the highest chance or the highest rate of success. So I happened to fall into the recruitment industry just by chance. I can't say it was something that I was focused on out of college, but fell into it and really loved the agility of the industry, the opportunity of the industry. Felt like there was definitely a skills gap within labor, but also a gap in how it could be better done. And I really became a student of the system first and learned as much as I could. I was lucky enough to train and be mentored by truly the greatest in industry, talking about transitionary stages, to be around really entrepreneurially minded people and people that see things from a bird's eye view, a very macro view about where they want to go and how to get there. And so I was lucky enough to be mentored by some amazing people and tried to, I think that always gave me the bug. I mean, everybody who was around gave me the bug to reach for something bigger. And it finally came to a turning point for me. And I felt like I had all the skills necessary and I was ready to make that big career jump. And that was a huge transitionary phase for me, a really exciting one at the same time.
Chad, why don't you explain to our listeners what it is that you do today?
So I own a company called Ignite Recruitment. We're a recruiter marketplace or essentially a hiring platform. Companies come to post jobs on our platform, and then freelance recruiters will sign up to work those jobs. We're pretty selective about the companies that we bring on. We keep quality control as high as possible. I think that's the big difference between us and a lot of maybe crowdsourced or gig economy type solutions. We really make sure we're working with the best companies that represent us really well and our candidates to have viable opportunities. And at the same time, we get about 1,000 recruiter signups a day, and we take on a very small percentage of those recruiters, and we make sure each person here is as successful as they can be. So it's really a great network of success that we've built through essentially a brokerage platform or a technology platform in the background.
And would a candidate somehow use Ignite?
It's great for candidates because they can sign up to any of our job postings, but also candidates get reached out. We primarily reach out to inactive and active candidates. We're not just passive. We reach out to people in the marketplace, and it's awesome for a candidate because if you were a basketball player and you had an agent to take your talents to a better team or a better contract. And that's what we do for our candidates. We represent them in a first class way. They don't have to talk to 50, 100 recruiters about every single thing they want in a job. They can tell us, and we can really go to market and tell them, hey, that job's not out there, or that job is out there, and let us make it happen for you. And let us try and get to that salary that you've always wanted to get to, or whatever you may need for your work-life balance. I don't think any candidate should go to market without a recruiter, honestly.
Chad, let's talk about the hiring market post-COVID. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in that marketplace?
All employers have gotten flexible in schedule. So that's been great. I think that's something that was really locked down previously. And it's been exciting to see employers get so open kind of workplace style where they can come in and go as you please. We didn't see that much of it all before. I have seen a big trend since COVID where everybody's coming back into the office. Over 90% of replacements currently are in-house positions, even very few are hybrid. So most are full-time in-house. And then one of the biggest trends that's been on everybody's talking point recently has been AI, and that changing how not just the applicant process, but actual day-to-day work as well.
And I want to come back to AI in just a little bit here. Chad, I know that we've talked before about the importance of networking. How do you coach people that ask you that they want to be better at networking? How do you coach them to be better at that? And then the flip side of that is, what have you seen not work effectively in networking?
Yeah, great question. Networking is something we know well. We do it every day here. The biggest thing is most people, I think, spread themselves too thin. And if you look at the majority of our calls, especially with candidates coming out of college or recently graduated, it's this specialism piece, the market segmentation. I think so many people talk about networking as this catch-all, this master of none, where you go after the entire market and try and almost become viral or popular, and very difficult. The easiest way is hyper niches, specialisms. And it's hard for people, I think, to answer that question. But one, what is your network, right? And identifying that microcosm network that you can be, you're not really a small fish in a big pond, right? You can be known and seen in that network, and you can provide value to that network. That's really the first question. And if you know that, it's quite easy to network. I've seen people who are not necessarily social that are really well networked in small communities, because it's somewhere they can provide a lot of value to and from the community. So I think that's the hard question that most people don't want to answer. I think a lot of people want to take the easy route and just connect in mass on LinkedIn or whatever it may be, but you're not really providing engaging value added. And that's the main thing, is what is that network? And I see a lot of people where they'll say, okay, my network is IT, but IT across America is way too large. We look at a lot of networks, like networks that we specialize in. One, for my example, might be pilots in Los Angeles or Southern California or Orange County. And when you break it down to a community and a skill set specialism, it becomes quite manageable. That's a big thing. And then I think LinkedIn, obviously any of the free tools, LinkedIn has been great for the marketplace and an amazing way to connect. Your first degree connections on LinkedIn, especially if they're in a relevant community like we discussed, that can make your posts reach out to a lot more people, get a lot more engagement. You can first degree message so many people. So I think having a robust, I see a lot of people with brand new LinkedIn profiles or that have been in the market for a long time with 50 connections. And you really do have to branch out and find people with commonality on LinkedIn. It's almost like your mother maybe told you when you were a kid, you're only as good as the friends you associate yourself with. And the same can be said a lot within your career community. But yeah, in regards to things I see people doing incorrectly, maybe on the networking path, is I think everybody's going for viral fame these days. I see a lot of posts on LinkedIn daily that don't get engagement, and they just don't know their audience. I really think it's an audience identification piece of the puzzle that's missing. And there's sometimes some really great posts, and I just read one recently where it's definitely interesting, but it got no engagement, and I was really surprised. But I think that person probably just hasn't developed a community he or she can speak to.
Chad, you spoke of earlier artificial intelligence, AI. How has it impacted the recruiting process? And if you had that proverbial crystal ball, what do you see on that in the future?
I do have the crystal ball for AI in the future. I can see exactly where it's going. Right now, there's parts of AI I really like, and there's parts of AI in the hiring process I don't like at all. There's been some recent legislation trying to be passed and has been passed in some states where we're trying to monitor the process on AI for, let's say, resume identification for candidate fits. That's a piece piece where I've used AI in the past and I've closed it off because I think there's a human element to choice and selection and personality fit and culture fit and even experience and skill set fit within companies. And someone that doesn't know how to build a resume that can fit different applicant tracking systems, AI, SEO friendly type resumes, that person shouldn't be missed or left behind just because they use maybe a more traditional resume. And this is something that's going to already becoming more and more prevalent and will become very prevalent in the near future if that's not reined back. And there's just really no way to stop it. And I think soon resumes won't even look the same way because you'll really have resumes that are built by AI, that are read by AI. And that can be dangerous for the hiring community as a whole. That's going to, I think, cause issues. Even really nowadays, I think we rely too heavily on the resume in general. So when we're going to a more data-centric hiring process, where all we're reading is the buzzwords on a resume, it's going to be detrimental to the job market and hiring. So those are some of just the onset cons of AI, but I think the future of AI in hiring is amazing. There's some really awesome technology that can help guide candidates through the hiring process, answer better questions. When you look at, we recently integrated ChatGPT into our systems to help candidates through the process, and we're rolling this out, as we speak more and more, and that's through their API integration. And that's been incredible because now the candidates can get questions answered on the fly, feel more confident, answer any question they want about your company without feeling burdensome. That's just one example of so many comforting aspects where AI can make the recruiting process more fun, enjoyable, easier, more knowledgeable. But yeah, I worry about letting AI take over human decision-making at the highest level in hiring.
You talked about AI and its involvement in resumes, whether it is AI crafted or by the individual. Do you need to have a different or unique resume for each time you apply for a job?
Yes and no. I think you should always have a standard general resume. This is one of the reasons why it's so great to work with a recruiter. If you are going out to market on your own behest, and similar to if you became your own realtor, you are going out to learn what's out there. You're trying to find it. Maybe you're not even necessarily a recruitment pro. Maybe you don't have a background in recruitment. So you're learning Boolean search string. You're learning all these different things to try and find out what companies are around you, et cetera, et cetera. And you're really kind of learning a new job, learning to become a realtor, so to speak, to buy your home. And you're going to start on your back foot. There's a lot of recruiters out there who already have these connections, already have these ties. If you are going to do it yourself, you almost have to make a general resume, pick the jobs you like the most, maybe make bespoke resumes for those particular jobs and really great cover letters. But what a risk to you, right? That could be huge amount of time investment to possibly not even get a response back. So I tell people a lot of times looking for a job is a full-time job. It's a very hard endeavor. There are great recruiters that already have ties into those communities. And that's one of the great things about using an agency, and just in, not even ours, just in general, or even multiple agencies if you're going to market on top of your job search, because they can really tell you when it's worth time to write a custom-made tailored resume. And we do that for people frequently, right? We might say, hey, this is a great company. We told them about you. They're very interested. Let's spruce your resume up. This is what they want to see. We can give off-the-cuff advice on how that person can stand out or make the resume look even better. And again, this is all kind of going back to communities and ties in those communities. Having that extra leg up on the competition always adds value.
Chad, is there a better, or on the flip side of that, not as good a time to be conducting your job search?
Yes, there's always, I think in every industry, it's quite cyclical and there's ebbs and flows in industry. If you look at anything residential right now, most of IT, other than there's few sectors that are hot at the moment within, but if you look at most of those, they're pretty recessed. It's going to be very difficult to find gainful employment if you're making a move. And it might be a better time to sit at your company and wait it out or start a business. And I think people have to make those hard decisions sometimes. A lot of times when people see the market as slowing down, they want to jump and they want to make a career change. The best time to get a new job is when you're happily employed. I know it's not always that way, but if you can make your transitions when you're getting promoted, when your company really wants you and doesn't want to leave, you can be a lot more selective in your hiring process if you're unemployed and have to get back to work and you're fighting that demon of time, you have to lower those expectations quite a bit because you are fighting time throughout that process. So that's another thing a lot of people don't think about is I think are quick to jump ship. And then once they're out there and unemployed, they find it, oh, I need to get back to work and I can't wait out for the perfect opportunity. That's a big thing is it's almost quite counterintuitive, but really when you're really doing great in your current role and the market's hot and everything's behind you, that's sometimes the best time to ask around again into your communities, not necessarily applying online, building that network first and seeing what's out there, because that's when you can get some really attractive jobs. And if the job's just not right or not perfect, you can sit it out and wait. There are always good times to leave, right? Even in what's going on in IT or residential right now, like I mentioned, those markets will turn around. If you can stay put, ride the storm, do that. It won't be long. The market will flip and it'll be hot again. And that's a great time to go to market if you can.
Chad, how do you coach someone who has a fear or just a distaste of selling themselves in the interview process?
I don't think you should sell yourself in the interview process. You want to put yourself in the best light. I guess I see so many people be employed in various different roles here. You definitely can sell yourself. And if you're a good salesman and you're a type A personality, that can be a real asset, and especially in the right job where that's a skill set that's desired. But I see completely antisocial. I'm thinking of one person now who's proudly antisocial, very much not a type A personality, only measures his words very carefully, but he works in such a hyper niche that it doesn't require a lot of collaboration. There's definitely teamwork involved, but it doesn't need that very communicative person, right? So I think if you are in a niche where you can let your work speak for yourself and you can have this person that I was just mentioning was an architect, a really incredible architect with an amazing portfolio. And a lot of architects are very good talkers, very personable, socially astute. And this person is not. And got one of the best offers I've seen in architecture thus far. It's a huge industry for us. We make a lot of placements in it. And it was one of the best offers I've seen. And it just goes to show that I think it's a testament to those people out there that don't want to sell themselves. You don't have to. But if you're not going to sell yourself, your work better back it up. Better make sure that you have a really stellar profile that can demand what you're looking for.
The interview process is oftentimes an emotional roller coaster. Any tips that you might have to help a candidate put themselves at ease?
Yes, I tell most candidates this, and I think a lot of our other recruiters do as well. Just look at searching for new employment as another job. I think that's the best way to kind of compartmentalize it. Anytime you're going to go to a new job, you're not going to be great at it right away. It's going to take time. You're going to have to learn. You're going to have to delve in head first and really figure out the nuances of that industry, how it works before you can be an expert. And looking for employment is really the same. You have to practice interviewing. You have to get better with your resume. And you'll talk to so many different people, recruiters, hiring managers, agency recruiters, external recruiters, et cetera. And each one of these experiences, you're only going to become more and more of a pro. I've seen it thousands of times over now. So I do feel like I'm a pro at it. And if I were to go back to market at some point in my career, I would be really good at it, really strong. But it's only because I've seen it so many times over and it's been really habitual practice for me. I think you really have to look at the career search the same way. It's something that it's not going to happen overnight. It might, and there's always that chance out there where your first interview could be the best one and you get the offer right away. But it's something we work at over time, and you're not going to be great at it right away. Just assume that from the onset and really just enjoy the practice of it, learning more about these companies, networking, building relationships, figuring out what you don't want. And maybe the best advice of all, too, to cap that off is I tell people all the time, hey, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. And you don't have to say yes just because they give you an offer. And that changes the dynamic a little bit. Ask them, hey, what do you like about the company? What are your favorite things? Why did you pick the job here? Where did you come from previous to this? And that a lot of times are great questions for interviewees where you can turn the table a little bit and decide, is this a company I even want to go to? And sometimes the answer is no. And that can take a lot of the pressure and stress off when you really think about, actually, this isn't the right company for me and they don't have what I'm looking for here.
Chad, what if you think that the interview just didn't go well? You were just off somehow. What do you do with that? I mean, do you contact the hiring manager and tell them that? Or is there anything that you would coach someone that has experienced that?
Yes, it's hard not to answer these questions, frankly, from our perspective, because to be fair, that is something we hear a lot, very commonly, and that's an objection that we deal with. but it's hard to imagine from a candidate aspect how that candidate might reach out. I guess you would do it the same way we do, but again, this is just more and more of a reason why I'd recommend, and I'm not just plugging our company here, any recruitment company or even multiples. It's more of a reason why you should add recruiters to your search, because having an agent to go to bat for you at a client and to say, hey, he or she didn't have her best performance. They would love to talk to you one more time. It was a rush and chaotic day for this person and whatever may happen. And you can have another individual kind of deliver that message that might have a better relationship with that person. If you're going to have to just reach out with a cold email post interview, it could be effective, but to be honest, it's probably lost at that point. Right. You really, some of these things you only get one shot at. It's like if you were to go to pitch your company on Shark Tank, you can't email the Shark Tank producers after and tell them, I didn't have my best showing. You didn't get a deal that day. Interviewing, unless there's some type of personal relationship, referral or friendship, a recruiter or someone that knows that person and can go to bat for you, I think it might be lost on a bad interview. And that's just the nature of the game. Luckily, there's thousands of companies out there, and a lot of people don't think of it like that. They think of it like there's only a few companies, and there's not. There's thousands and thousands of companies and new companies every day being added. If you don't get the right interview, it's okay. You'll live to fight another day.
Chad, I'm hearing more and more candidates that are being ghosted by recruiters or hiring managers. Can you describe what that's all about? And is there a way that a candidate can avoid or at least limit the number of times that might happen to them?
Yes, that is a bad practice. And I don't think that comes typically from disrespect or even laziness. I think most of the time when I hear about that or I talk to clients about that, I attribute it back to disorganization. And there's just a lot of disorganized HR departments. You kind of have to realize that a lot of these HR departments are getting immense pressure, not to necessarily defend the people that are doing this, because it's something we really work hard not to do. We fight for our candidates' replies with our clients and make sure we get those back, not just get those back, we get them back in a timely manner. But that's something that these HR departments are, especially nowadays, put in so much pressure. They're leaner than ever, smaller than ever. They've got some of these companies have more hiring demand than ever, more work for a smaller team. And that leads to disorganization. That leads to things getting lost in the shuffle. So I wouldn't take it personally. 9 times out of 10, if not more, 99% of the time, it just comes down to forgetting and not somebody not liking you or whatever it may be. The market as a whole does need to get better about that. I do think candidates could be better about following up too. That's a great thing. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. I think a lot of candidates feel like they shouldn't follow up because they might be annoying. But many times a candidate will follow up. I've seen it firsthand where a candidate will follow up and then the client will say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We forgot about that. Yeah, we'd love to have a second interview." And what a great sigh of relief for that candidate when that happens. So it does happen, and it's something to try your best to follow up in a nice way, and don't take it personally if they don't get back to you.
And do you have any rule of thumb in terms of how soon you should follow up after your interview and how many times you should follow up before you give it up?
Yeah, I think as sooner the better. 24, 48 hours is great. 48 hours is good, 2 days. Within the same week, if you can. I don't think there's a hard rule of thumb, but we typically will follow up with a candidate from a client 2 or 3 times. After that, I think people have to kind of get the hint. Maybe they didn't like that candidate for whatever reason, or that candidate wasn't of high enough demand to them to get back. And some clients are that way, right? There's just different, when you're selling people to people, and it's very dynamic and there's many different personalities. But yeah, 2 or 3 times if I had to put a hard number on it, and I would follow up quick. Phone call is always the best. A lot of people resort to email, text. Text is probably the worst, maybe the most casual, but email, because it's easier. Look at even me, I get hundreds of emails a day and it's so much work just to get through them all. It's easy to get things missed, but sometimes someone can call me on the fly, and if they happen to get me and get me to answer, I'm happy to hear from them, happy to talk to them, and we can hash it out right there, whatever we need to get accomplished. And it's the same way for following up. Most people don't want to do the phone call, but I think if you do have a direct line and you do have a phone number, a nice phone call, just say hi, say thanks for your time. I was hoping to get on your calendar for a second interview. Do you think this is something we can move forward with? Something casual can go a long way.
Chad, what if during your transition time that you take a consulting assignment? So kind of a 2-part question. Is that a good idea? And number 2, you as a recruiter, how do you view that candidate that has that consulting engagement?
I would say don't. It depends on what you're looking for out of a career. If it kind of sounds like this question's in reference to someone that's very much in the career market, that's looking to further their career. And when I say that, I mean with corporations. A lot of people that take consulting get pigeonholed into consulting or contracting. And nature of the beast, if it's a good thing or a bad thing, either way, it's still very much a real thing. And you have to find a path that best fits what you're looking for, what that outcome is. If you're very entrepreneurial and you're maybe looking to start your own business, why not? Consulting could be great stopgap between then. Maybe do different consulting jobs, get varied experience. I see some really good resumes, especially on the construction side, who have done consulting jobs that have amazing project experience from employer to employer. If you're asking, let's say, a $300,000 salary and you want stock benefits that come with that and you want this big sweetheart deal, well, a company is taking a big risk to put you in that salary. And if you like it or not, if they're looking at an A and a B candidate and that A candidate has been with the same employer for 15 years, and has been promoted 4 times along the way, just came off a recent promotion. And they're looking at a B candidate who has had 10 consulting jobs in a row and hasn't had a standard W-2 job at a big corporation for 5-8 years. They're going to go with candidate A every time, even if candidate B is more experienced. And it's just a safer bet and for that company. And you have to realize that a lot of these companies are more risk adverse than they are opportunistic. Like I said, there are many times I've looked at a candidate and thought, wow, that candidate's a better experience. But I know the company went with the less risky option. You have to kind of put yourself in the shoes of a big corporation and how they make decisions.
Chad, any books or other resources that you would recommend to our listeners who might be in transition?
Yeah, I like 2 books that I could relate to people in transition. These are maybe stretches, but there's a really easy read, quick read that if you haven't read it, you should. The 1 Minute Manager by Kenneth Blanchard. It's just really a kind of standard management book. But the best thing about it is it talks a lot about communication, feedback channels, how to manage and prioritize your life, how to stay organized, how to give constructive feedback. And even though it's focused around management, I think it applies more to just employee management and more to day-to-day management. It was one of the first books I read when I got into business, and I still utilize the daily principles today. And I think that's a great book when you think about the actual interview process itself and taking on another job, so to speak, of going out and looking for a new job. That's something where you can help organize and better structure through good format. There's another book I like that I could think would apply. I can't remember the exact name. I think it's called How to Change the World, but it's essentially about social entrepreneurship. Again, not necessarily probably a traditional book that you would apply to hiring or career change, but it's a great book with really awesome stories about entrepreneurs and building innovative solutions, addressing issues that cause better social change. And it's just a good book for people that are looking to make a positive impact on the world. And I think the new generation of kids coming out of college is really good about that. But the older generation, there's some takeaways there. As many great things as the older generation does in the employment market, we can align ourselves with companies that better fit what we want to see in the world. And that's going back to that thing I was referencing earlier about interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, to really think about, okay, what is this company doing in terms of what I want out of the world? How do I play a part in that? Where do I see myself within that social transition and that social change? And if that job's really important to you, you're going to stand out more as an applicant as well. People that are really passionate about what they do can talk about it easier, off the cuff, they can work all day and night because it doesn't feel like a job. It's fun and a job in a traditional sense. So those are some fun reads that it'd be nice to try and read those and apply those to better principles on career change.
Chad, we covered so much information today. If our listeners remember only 3 things as their takeaway from our discussion, what are those 3 things that you want them to leave with?
Maybe just embrace change. Again, I talked to just not necessarily as front lines as I used to be, but throughout the years, I've talked to so many people that have been in the hiring market for various reasons, some out of necessity, some out of just seeing what's out there, whatever it may be, or looking for something better. But I think change is going to happen, whether you like it or not. Industries that you think are never going to fall flat are going to. And be ready for that change. Prepare for it early. And when it happens, things will be all right. I see a lot of people that they get really fearful of change, and it actually is quite counterintuitive because they can't think positively or excited about what's to come and what's around the horizon. And then on the flip side of that, I see a lot of people that are extremely positive and nothing can get them down. And I do think it's an asset if you can channel that and you can keep that positivity towards your next venture. It'll carry you to your next venture faster and better. Maybe a second one might be continuous learning. I really feel like I'm a constant student myself. I work work very hard to never settle in my craft. And I think anyone should do the same. Another thing I see a lot of people settle. They get to a certain point in their career and that just feels good enough. And look, you don't have to always aspire to move up the totem pole. That's not necessarily what I'm saying, but you can't always aspire to, if we're using the basketball reference again, like earlier, you can't always aspire to hit a better jump shot or make, 3-pointers more often. There is daily repetitions and practice that can be done in any craft to make yourself less likely to layoffs, more exclusivity in the job market. So you're in higher demand. They might not be essential at the current moment because you might be happy in your job, but again, change happens. So set yourself up for that. Always continue learning, have a passion about your craft, and really, take it seriously. And then the last one, maybe just on our topic, personal branding, building that community, building that network. That's something that I've seen time and time again in every aspect of business. It's really all about who you know at times. That's fortunate or unfortunate, depending on your situation, but that's such a big piece. And if you have that personal brand, and when I say personal brand, I don't necessarily mean have a personal brand like, hey, he's a likable guy. I sometimes mean more, you might just have a personal brand within your tiny community, right? This guy, it could be something small, like you're the best welder for pipes and rare metals within Houston, Texas, for machine shops, right? It doesn't have to be this big gargantuan task of building this massive brand for yourself in the market. It can be something small and minute that relate to your craft, or small and minute to the greater scheme of things, but big and important to you. So find what that is, build a community around that, and be known as the expert, or be known as someone that can have a valuable assistance, a valuable help within that community.
Chad, the times that we have talked, I have come to believe how strong you have honed your craft in the recruiting space. And the fact that you were willing to share this with us today is really such a positive thing. So thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. I hope it helps for anyone listening.
Thank you for listening. We're working in unprecedented times. The purpose of these episodes is to give you the support and critical tools to adjust with the changing marketplace. I'll continue to introduce you to guests who have successfully survived their own obstacle course and can share useful information. If today's message was helpful to you, please share it on your social media. Your review and rating helps get this to more people. Also, if you have questions or podcast ideas for future conversations, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Change is constant. The more prepared you are for it, the better and easier the change will occur. Thank you again. This is your host, Bob Gerst. See you at our next episode.